All right, what's going on, everybody? Hope everyone is doing well. Welcome to the show. My name is Joey Mistretta. I'll be hosting the show solo this week. My co-host Josh, he's busy right now, so this week you'll have to just deal with me. And I think it'll be an interesting show this week. We got a lot to discuss actually. Um, the Braves, their shortstop situation is now uncertain with the Ha-Seong Kim injury. The big news, of course, the Dodgers signing Kyle Tucker. That's why I'm wearing this right here. I will give you all my thoughts on that, and we'll get into the impact on baseball as well. I know everyone's kind of talking about that right now, but I think you guys will want to hear what I have to say. I have some interesting thoughts on it. Then we'll also talk about the remaining free agents, Cody Bellinger, from Valdez, Zach Gallen. Kind of give you my thoughts on where they might end up, what I've heard, that kind of thing. So yeah, should be a good show this week, and let's get into it. So beginning with the Braves and Ha-Seong Kim. For those who didn't hear, Ha-Seong Kim is expected to miss 4 to 5 months with an injury. I believe it's a hand injury, and just a brutal blow. Mark Bowman, a reporter for the Braves, he reported that Kim suffered the injury after he fell on ice. So it wasn't even a baseball-related injury. Just a really unfortunate situation, like not what you expect in January to hear about an injury like this. But that's what happened. So definitely not what you want to hear if you're the Braves or Ha-Seong Kim. And the thing about Kim is they re-signed him to be their 2026 shortstop. Like, I don't think he's their shortstop of the future, but he was going to be their guy this year. And the Braves probably felt like, okay, we got our guy. We don't have to worry about shortstop this year. Great. And now that's not the case. So this was a problem they didn't think they'd have to deal with. Now you're kind of talking about, okay, what do we do at short? Well, if the season began today, I believe that Dubon would probably be their starting shortstop. Now, is that what you want? Is he the guy you want at short? I mean, probably not. And that's not me hating on him. But anybody who knows Dubon, he's more of a middle infield, versatile type of guy. He can play multiple positions, And I think that's a good role to have. Like, utility guys are huge. The Braves also signed today, and I'm filming this on January 19th. This will be posted on January 20th. But the Braves did sign Jorge Mateo to a deal. Mateo, he's a really good base stealer. He runs well, can play in multiple positions. But he's another guy who's probably best suited in a utility role. So you look at the Braves situation, right? Is it worth going out and trading for or signing a shortstop? Well, let's look at the timeline. Ha-Seong Kim is expected to miss 4 to 5 months. That's assuming no setbacks occur. He ends up being right on schedule or even ahead of schedule. If that's the case, you're looking at a May to June return. Because right now it's January 19th, I'm filming this. January 20th is when this will be posted. February, March, April, May. Then you get into June. So he might end up missing a month and a half, maybe 2 months, if there's no setbacks. If I'm the Braves, that might be enough for me to go out and get somebody else. I mean, the NL Central, it has talent this year. The Phillies are really good. The Mets should be better. Well, I don't know. They did lose some players, but they got Bichette. They have a better bullpen. The Mets are going to be competitive. The Nationals are rebuilding. The Marlins are probably not going to compete. You never know. But I don't know if I want to enter the season with either Dubon or Mateo as my starting shortstop. And again, no, not me hating on them at all. It's just those guys are much better suited for that utility, versatile role. So if they were to make a trade, who could they trade for? So I was looking around the league, and there's not really a lot of shortstops who would be available. There's maybe a few guys they could reach out to, but the one that kind of stands out, and I got to give credit to Harold Reynolds of MLB Network on this. They had a segment, I think it was today, maybe yesterday, and they were talking about who they could acquire. And he mentioned C.J. Abrams of the Nationals. Now, for those who don't know, Abrams was mentioned as a trade candidate earlier in the season. In recent weeks, I haven't really heard his name mentioned in trade rumors. Mackenzie Gore of the Nats is kind of the guy who's been mentioned as like their biggest trade candidate, and it seems more likely that he'd be traded. But you have to wonder if they would consider trading him at all. Now, the problem with the Braves is those teams both play in the NL East. And, would you want to, let's see here. We got a notification from something here. Oh, yeah, here we go. No, we're good. We're good. Making sure there's no injury updates there. That would have been something else happened, but no, we're good. It was just the notification about the Mateo signing became official a little bit earlier today. Anyway, C.J. Abrams, you're both in the NL East with the Nationals. Do we want those teams to, I don't know, make a trade? Because if Abrams ends up being the Braves shortstop of the future, the Nationals will regret trading him to them. It's just a fact. And I mean, like, you could get a great return, but it doesn't matter. Like, you're trying to hopefully surpass the Braves someday for the Nationals. So that's a risky trade. Would they do it for the right price? Maybe. I don't know. But I think they'd probably rather trade with any other division, especially if it's in the American League. That'd be even better for them. So I wouldn't count on that happening. And looking around baseball, like, there's not many free agents left when it comes to middle infielders. The best infield free agent left is Eugenio Suarez, and he's a third baseman who's known for his offense. He's not even a great defensive third baseman, so he's not going to play shortstop for you. And there's not many other shortstops really available. So if you're the Braves, you might have to start either Mateo or Dubon, and it would probably be Dubon. But I'd at least reach out to the Nationals, say, hey, is he available? Could we discuss something? And if they just say, nope, not going to happen, then okay. At least he tried. So we'll see what happens with that. There's no guarantees when it comes to that, but I think if you're the Braves, you have to just consider bringing in somebody, because you don't want to have a hole at one of the most premier positions in baseball. Like, their roster is pretty good. Their infield's really good. But you don't want to risk not playing up to your expectations just because shortstop isn't meeting expectations, right? So it's just an unfortunate situation with Kim, the injury, and you wish him a speedy recovery, of course. Hopefully he comes back and plays well. But yeah, it's shortstop's important. It's arguably the most important position. Obviously, catcher's huge, center field's huge, but from a position player standpoint, you need a good shortstop. Anyway, transitioning now to the big news, which a lot of you may be here for. Kyle Tucker to the Dodgers. Wow. Was I surprised? No, of course not. I don't think anybody was truly surprised. Because even while the Mets and Blue Jays were being talked about as free agency destinations for Kyle Tucker, I think we all knew the Dodgers were lurking. They were waiting to make their move. And sure enough, they came in with a short-term, high AAV deal. That's what they've been doing. The 4-year contract. There's deferred money involved. All the stuff that people hate about the Dodgers, people did it. So first, let's talk about, we don't really even need to talk about the fit. Like, the fit works. You play him in one of the corner outfield spots. I think he's going to play right field. I think Teoscar will move to left. And you add him to a lineup with, Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman. It's an all-star team. I saw somebody compared the AL all-star team from last year to the Dodgers, and there's an argument to be made that the Dodgers are a better team. Like, at least offensively. It's just insane. And Kyle Tucker really is one of the best players in baseball. And I think he's a little bit underrated, which I don't know why that is. I think he's just not quite as flashy as some other guys. He's not really like I don't know. I don't know if he's not a high energy guy, but he hasn't been the most marketable player, I think. Now he's in LA, so he'll be a lot more marketable just because he's in LA. But yeah, I think the fit makes sense. But I want to discuss the backlash the Dodgers are getting for this. First of all, it's not the Dodgers' fault. Like they're doing what they're allowed to do. Like, if there is any problem, it's a baseball problem. It's not the Dodgers' problem. Because the Dodgers, they're allowed to do the deferred money stuff. They're allowed to do the short-term contracts. They're allowed to go out and sign anybody they want. And I know people are saying, well, yeah, I mean, any owner can go out and spend a lot of money. Sure, okay, but the Dodgers are able to spend more than other teams. They're in LA. It's a huge market. Dodger fans love their ball club. They're showing up to every game. I grew up in SoCal. Every Dodger game I went to, it felt like it was sold out. It probably was. The fans there, they love their team. They love their Dodgers. So yeah, a team like, I don't know, the Royals, the Guardians, the Pirates, they're not going to be able to attract the same level of free agent. If there was a salary cap or a salary floor added, that would make things easier, for sure. But even then, like LA is still a place people want to be. Pro athletes, you're living the celebrity life, right? You can go sit courtside at the Lakers game. You can feel like you're in Hollywood, basically. Like, I get it. I get it. So what's the problem? What is there any issue here? Yes and no. Yes and no. I think you look at the Dodgers, it's more of the thing that, okay, so when it comes to winning, the Dodgers might lose in the first round of the playoffs next year. Baseball, anything can happen. You could play a great game, and if your seventh inning reliever has a terrible inning, gives up 5 runs, you might lose the game. Maybe they're playing, I don't know, the Brewers next year in the playoffs, and maybe they still have Freddie Peralta, and he throws 2 shutouts in a playoff series, and the Brewers upset them. Or maybe the Pirates shock everybody and make the playoffs and beat them. That won't happen, probably not. But you get my point. Like baseball, anything can happen. Last year, the Blue Jays almost beat the Dodgers. The Padres have almost beat the Dodgers. The Padres did beat the Dodgers a few years ago in the playoffs. So did the Diamondbacks. Anything can happen. For me, I don't really care about the winning element because I don't think that the Dodgers winning the World Series is the problem. In fact, that really adds more marketability to the sport because people love seeing them in there. And I think it's good to have like the bad guy, the evil empire, the team that everybody wants to beat. I don't really care about that part of it. The part of it that sucks is, yes, I'm wearing this Dodgers hat. I'm actually a Cleveland Guardians fan, which I'm not from Ohio. I have family from Ohio. That's a story for another time. But when it comes to the MLB offseason, I know for a fact that my Guardians probably aren't really going to sign anybody, like any of these like superstar notable free agents. It gets a little annoying when our top free agent every year is like a reunion with Austin Hedges, which no hate to him. I love Austin Hedges. He's a fun player to watch, but he's not exactly Kyle Tucker out there. And there's a lot of other fan bases that feel the same way. You talk about teams like the Pirates and the Royals and the Reds and the Tigers and these smaller market teams. They rarely are involved in the top free agency rumors. Even the rumors are kind of fun, right? But the only fan bases that really get involved with the rumors consistently, I know this year the Orioles signed Pete Alonso and the Blue Jays are there now, which is cool. But consistently, it's the Dodgers, it's the Yankees, the Mets, the Red Sox. I guess now the Blue Jays, like they've been involved. Not really a lot of others, right? Like the Astros have made some moves. The Phillies, I didn't mention them. The Phillies. But yeah, overall, there's not many. And then you look at other sports, right? Any offseason, the smaller market team can go and sign the big name. LeBron James started his career in Cleveland, getting drafted there, fine. Then he goes to Miami. You think the Marlins are going to sign the best player in baseball? No. The Heat, they signed the best player in the NBA. They also signed Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, or they already had them. My point is, they built a big three with LeBron James. And then LeBron goes back to Cleveland. You think the Guardians would do something like that? No. And then he ends up in LA, which is fine. Okay. So looking at that, would that kind of thing ever happen in baseball? No way. No way. That would be the equivalent of the Guardians having the number 1 overall pick, selecting the best player, which they actually did have the number 1 pick last year. Anyway, the player leaves Cleveland in free agency, signs with the Miami Marlins. Okay, bear with me. Then that same player, who's still the best player in the sport, returns to Cleveland, and then ends up in LA later in his career. That would never happen. I mean, the LA part would, but the Guardians and the Marlins part, right now, that would never, ever happen. And that's what's cool about the NBA, is every offseason, you feel like your team can sign anybody. Now, obviously, some teams are rebuilding. It's not common, like Utah. they're not getting linked to all the star big names because they're rebuilding and whatever. But they could. Like, financially, they could. And in the NFL, it's the same deal. So my point is, I think the offseason is a time that can be really exciting. It can be fun. But I want it to be fun for everybody. I don't just want to hear Dodgers and Yankees are linked to that guy again in rumors. We know that. I want to hear the Pirates getting linked to the best player. I want to hear the Guardians getting linked to the best player. Give me the Royals and Marlins on it in a rumor for the best player, right? Like, I'm tired of the same teams over and over and over and over. Now, again, it's not those big teams' fault. Like, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. But if we do find a way to implement a cap or a floor or something, that could make things so much more interesting. The problem with a cap is I don't think the players would agree to it unless it doesn't limit their pay somehow. But to have a cap, it might limit the overall money they can make. And you might not see those $700 million type of contracts unless the cap is negotiated in a way where it still allows for that type of deal, which I don't know how that would work. That's above my pay grade. That's like the in-depth money element. I'd have to really look into that. But yeah, it's an interesting situation, and I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about that. I'm going to get to the free agency stuff here in a second with the other guys, but I think this is a point that was worth getting in depth with, and I'm trying to think if I have any more notes on this. I think I said what I need to say. But yeah, Kyle Tucker to the Dodgers, big move. All right, let's talk about Cody Bellinger. So yeah, Bo Bichette ends up with the Mets, Kyle Tucker with the Dodgers. So now where will Cody Bellinger end up? I love Bellinger. He started his career in LA with the Dodgers, and like I told you guys, I got to, I grew up in SoCal, went to college around that area, and got to see the Dodgers play quite a bit. So I watched Cody Bellinger quite a bit, and really fun player to watch. I graduated college in 2020, and Bellinger, his MVP season was 2019. So that was incredible. And then since then he's had ups and downs, but he's coming off a fine year with the Yankees, and he's looking for his next contract. And I think he wants a long-term deal. So where does he end up? Well, the Yankees and him, it almost feels like the boyfriend-girlfriend who are so off and on, and each week they're in a fight. Like, it's kind of what it feels like with the Yankees and Dodgers. Or, excuse me, the Yankees and Bellinger. Because there's like reports almost every week that the Yankees are preparing for him to move on. And then the next week it's like, oh, they're back in talks. I don't know what the heck's going on. Yeah, I'm just reading stuff over here. There's so many different rumors and reports about this. Other teams that could be involved are the Mets. They're still involved. The Blue Jays are a possibility. I think they were in on Tucker. They didn't get him, so Belly's a guy they could consider. And look, I'm never going to rule out the Dodgers. I know they signed Kyle Tucker. They don't really need Bellinger. But I think at this point, it's almost foolish to say no to the Dodgers because they're the Dodgers. Another team that I think, could make sense is the Angels. I don't think they'll sign him, and I don't think they should. But they have been willing to, dish out those big contracts to position players in the past. It hasn't always worked out, but they do. But if I'm the Angels, like they need pitching desperately. So I wouldn't sign Bellinger unless it's like a short-term deal. But yeah, I do think, and again, this goes back to my other point about the teams being linked to the best players. It's kind of what's happening here again, but it is what it is. I think Yankees, Dodgers, Mets, and Blue Jays are probably the top 4 teams, I would think. Maybe the Phillies get involved because they missed out on Bichette and they didn't get Tucker. So there's other teams that could make sense, but those are probably the 4, I would say. And you talk about Cody Bellinger, he can play outfield, but he can also move to first base if you need him to. And if you sign him to like that 7 or 8 year deal and maybe his defense declines in the future, you can just put him at first base. So I think it's a good signing. He's won. He knows what it takes to win. He can run a little bit. He plays good defense right now. Good left-handed hitter. His peaks and valleys can be a little intimidating. He has some stretches where he really struggles, but I'd be willing to give Cody, a 5 to 7 year deal at a respectable AAV. I mean, I think you bring in a guy like Cody Bellinger. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, I like the way he plays the game. So just for fun, let me predict where I think he's going to end up. And let me know what you guys think as well. Now, looking at all the teams involved, the Mets, they're always a threat to spend a lot of money. But I think they're pretty content right now. I don't know if Steve Cohen, you never know. But I'm going to say the Yankees. The Yankees have been really quiet this offseason. They need to do something, and they really can't afford to lose Bellinger right now because they didn't get any of the other big names. So I'm going to say Yankees. I think they make it happen. It's just been back and forth with those teams, and I don't know what the latest report is. I don't know what things stand right now. But, I think at this point, you got to think Yankees. All right, and finally, let's talk about the 2 star remaining pitchers in free agency, Framber Valdez and Zach Gallen. Now, there was the big 3 kind of the pitchers, and Ranger Suarez is now a Boston Red Sox. He signed with them. So we got Framber, we got Gallen, and I don't really know what the holdup is with these guys. They're both good pitchers. With Gallen, I think he's coming off a down year, and there may be some hesitancy to give him that long-term deal. If I'm Zach Gallen, honestly, I might just sign a 1-year deal or a 2 or 3 year deal with opt-outs and kind of make 2026 a prove-it year. Because right now, I don't think he's going to get what he wants in free agency. But if he were to say he signs a 2-year deal with the team, and there's an opt-out after next year, and say he pitches well. This guy's a Cy Young candidate when he's fully healthy and when he's pitching on top of his game. Even if he's not a Cy Young candidate, but he has an all-star type of season, he's going to get paid a lot more money next offseason, and he would get a longer deal most likely. So if he's not getting the contract he wants, you got to think like a prove-it type of year would make sense. And there's a lot of teams around baseball that would love to have a starting pitcher like Gallen for even just for 1 season. You talk about the San Francisco Giants. That's a team I think could make sense. A Diamondbacks reunion could make sense. Obviously, the big market teams like the Yankees and Mets, the Phillies, okay, that could be a possibility. The Orioles need a pitcher. But with the Orioles, they've been more linked to Framber Valdez. So let's talk about him. Valdez he's an ace caliber pitcher. I don't really know what the holdup is with him either. I actually thought he would sign first, before Ranger and before Gallen, but I guess Ranger got the contract he wanted. If I'm Valdez, these guys are all in, the late 20s, early 30s. He's probably going to get a longer deal, I would think. But if he doesn't get what he wants either, he could also do the short-term type of deal. But I would think he'd get, a 4 or 5 year contract or something. Maybe he wants more, I'm not sure. There's a lot of teams that would love to have him, and the Orioles make the most sense, I think, because they really need pitching. Their offense is great. They have a good lineup. They need another pitcher. So whether it's Gallen or Valdez, I think either of these guys could make a lot of sense. I mean, I think, for the Orioles, they need that. I'm trying to think of other teams for Valdez. I mean, the Giants could make sense for him as well. One team that, again, the whole big market thing, but just for fun, just to throw it out there, I feel like the Royals are a pitcher and an outfielder away from being a contender. Their infield's good. You look at Sal Perez and Bobby Witt Jr. and all these guys, and the starting rotation has Cole Reagans, but there's kind of question marks aside from him. If you go and get a Gallen or a Framber, the Royals could compete in the AL Central. And if you make the playoffs, anything can happen. I'm not saying I've heard they're linked to him or that they're linked to either of these pitchers. I'm just saying it could make sense. Also, the Reds, the small market team. I'm a Guardians fan, so I'm all for throwing the small market teams into these conversations. But again, it probably won't be either of those teams. But hey, maybe their market stall out, and maybe the Royals and Reds say, hey, we can now afford these guys. Let's go take a chance. You never know. But yeah, that's where Framber and Gallen stand. Now, the last thing I wanted to discuss, I wanted to make a little bit of a prediction, I guess, just for the Braves after what happened with Ha-Seong Kim, and do I think they can bounce back this season? You look at the Braves, and I think, last year was a down year. There's no question. They've had a pretty good offseason. They brought in some bullpen help. Raisel Iglesias is still there. They brought in Suarez in the back end, like the eighth inning guy. He's been a closer in the past, so bullpen's looking good. The pitching rotation could be really good with Chris Sale and Schwellenbach, and if Strider bounces back. Offensively, they have guys, Acuna and Matt Olson and Austin Riley. The Kim injury is tough, no question. And I would love it if they had another shortstop. But, I think the Braves are at least a wild card team. Last year was a tough year. But it's tough. It's difficult for me to envision them completely missing the playoffs again. The NL East is a good division. Like I said, the Mets are probably going to be competitive, and the Phillies are still really good. Although the Phillies, they really haven't done much. They've re-signed Real Muto and Schwarber. They lost Ranger Suarez. They haven't made a ton of additions. So, I don't know. Maybe the Braves can make things interesting. I'm not sure. But yeah, I think the Braves, I'm not saying they're going to win the division, but I think at the very least, they're going to be a wild card team. And we'll see what happens with them. I don't know. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Anyway, y'all, thank you guys for watching the podcast this week. A lot of stuff to discuss, and I think we covered it well. The Kyle Tucker stuff is crazy. Like, that whole situation is the main talking point in baseball right now. And like I said, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. So let me know in the comments. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Remember to like and subscribe. Take care.